Earlier this December, the Hitchhiker's Guide to Disbelief recorded a podcast that they titled Introduction to Flat Earth Theory. And the response to that podcast, and also a video that you can watch on YouTube, was not nice. And for obvious reasons. They did belittle the theory behind the flat earth. They made fun of it. So they came back with a challenge to those people who feel that the earth is flat, that it's a plane. And within this challenge, they asked for your help, for you, the people who believe that the world is flat, to come to them, to help answer questions, to help them understand. So after about a week and a half of sifting through emails, going through Twitter tweets, and all kinds of other stuff, the guys settled on 5 appropriate people. After we got together and we all discussed it, they narrowed it down to 1. And that's who you're going to hear tonight. Tonight you're going to hear a gentleman who goes by the name of Flat Earth Head on YouTube. He has several videos out there, and he took the time. He took the time out of his busy schedule and his research to spend some time with the Hitchhiker's Guide to Disbelief. And we're very thankful. All of us here at Jack Russell Productions are very, very thankful to Walt. So please enjoy. And if you feel that you have something to add to this conversation, if you feel that you know something that we could really use, if you feel that you're so proficient in any topic that you hear us discussing tonight, please do not hesitate to email us or just drop us a comment in the comment box below. So, I give you questions and answers.
All right, Walt. It's the doc. Um, so, is there some place you want to start? If you want to give us a brief history, maybe, of
Okay.
how you
Stumbled upon this
stumbled
madness.
upon it? Yep.
Yeah, I've always looked into the other side, if you will, the alternative truths, the paranormal, whatever term you want to put to it. I've always dug deeper than the average person, I guess. And I mean, this has literally been a lifelong thing for me. Uh, and ironically, I guess it kind of started with the Apollo missions. I was 2 years old. My mother took me outside watching the show on TV. We went outside. She pointed up to the moon. That's where those guys on TV are. And from that point on, I was pretty much hooked. Uh, and when I tell people that, they're like, there's no way you remember that. You were 2 years old. Well, I also remember just not long after that having this horrible experience of these loud screaming noises waking me up, me thinking it was something coming to get me, or my grandmother had the old can opener with the knife sharpener on it, and that was running real loud in my room. I didn't know what it was. And when I tell my mom that, she says, wow, that was Hurricane Camille. That was like a month later after the Apollo thing. So I guess you do remember all that stuff. Uh, from that point on, it was pretty much, I'm going to be an astronaut. I watched all the launches. I did the science, tried to keep the good grades. That was my starting point on looking into things. And of course, back then, things like In Search of were on TV, talking about UFOs, talking about Bigfoot, just anything alternative I looked into it. I mean, it's a crazy world out there. Why not see what else is going on? Uh, Long story it would take to get to the details, but through high school, through college, lots of unanswered questions which didn't make sense to me. I had done a lot of studying on planetary alignments and orbital geometry and just the whole everything that should work the way they say it works. One of the first ones that kind of was a head scratcher for me was Halley's Comet. I was lucky enough to see it when it came through back in the 80s, and it wouldn't be back again for 80 plus years. Well, I got to thinking about that. Something's traveling away from our sun so far that it takes that long to get back, then where's the gravitational attraction happening? Shouldn't it be pulling things from that far out all the way into our system? And shouldn't all the things that are that far out be attracted to our sun if it is and keeps that same pattern throughout history? That just didn't jibe. And then gravity itself was always a head scratcher. Okay, we're on a spinning ball. It's doing 1,000 miles an hour. It doesn't fling all this water off like when I fling a rag around over my head. So what's keeping it there? Well, this thing called gravity, which holds all this tonnage of water in place, but lets it be free enough for fish to swim through it. Birds can dive into it and pull those fish out. Dolphins can jump in and out of it. Then there's the atmosphere that miraculously doesn't evaporate due to the effects of entropy off into this infinite vacuum we're supposed to be surrounded by. It's held in place by this same magical gravity, but I can walk through it. Birds can take off and fly in it. Insects can, fly through it. It just doesn't hold together. If it worked that way, there should be a dividing line at that line up there where the spinning stops and the entropy starts, and the rockets going through that should be split in half when they reach that, like sheared in half. Uh, it just doesn't all hold together when you do all the logicking through it. If you look at it with, don't look at it from their point of view, don't look at it from their teachings, just look at it with a logical sense.
Now, when
How
you
can you
say
hold me down?
now when you say
But I
there
can still.
is um is there anybody specifically that you're referring to?
Oh, just teaching, school, education. I mean, we all were taught that we're on a ball, that orbital mechanics work this way, that the sun's this far away. I mean, this is what you're taught. And I don't know about you guys, but even in first grade, I saw the globe. They told me there was water sticking to it on the bottom, and people were down there, and it just didn't make sense. And so throughout the years, they keep telling you that. And if you don't repeat that back, you don't get the A's, you don't get the good grades. If you start questioning those things too much, you literally don't pass. So you have to parrot back what they want to hear and get the grades. Again, I wanted to be an astronaut. I wanted to pass all of these classes, all these astrophysics classes, all these physics classes, and get to that point of being able to go out there into this infinite void they tell me is there. You
So
guys didn't scratch your head when you were told there was magic gravity holding you to a ball upside down when you spun around? I mean,
I scratch my head every day, so I can't attribute
like,
it to one thing or another.
right. Well,
Um,
that was just questions throughout school that puzzled me, and no one could ever adequately explain. If you have, you can't have all these things work two ways. One of the other questions that always intrigued me was if a plane takes off going east, shouldn't it get there quicker than one heading west? But they always generally have pretty much the same flight path. And this was all before I knew anything about flat Earth. This is all just questions in high school, 20 years ago, college. Uh, the flat Earth thing really has not come up in my life until about, I guess, March of this year, and I guess if you guys want to kind of skip ahead to that, I mean, that's
yeah. So
kind of
what
where
did it
all
in
the,
March?
right.
What happened in March?
Okay. I'm a sky watcher because, again, space. I've looked telescopes all my life, kept up with the eclipses, watched them when I could, and I saw some strange things one night myself with my own eyes. It looked to me like there were clouds behind the moon up there, and I'm like, no, that's not possible. Another question, sorry, that intrigued me throughout my life. You've looked up and seen that big ring of clouds around the moon at night, especially on a cold night. You know what
Right.
I'm talking
Yep.
about? Okay. That just never made sense. How could that have happened from 237,000 miles away? It would have to be half the Earth with a size ring that you couldn't see because of the distance away from you, and it just didn't make sense that it could be that localized right over your head. Well, I saw something even more bizarre. I saw clouds behind the moon, and that's just not possible. So I go to see if there's some kind of something going on, bending of light effect, refraction. What is this? And of course, I get directed to numerous videos showing exactly what I saw, clouds behind the moon. And actually now, clouds behind the sun, and I've never seen that until recently. So looking at the videos, trying to figure out why the moon is doing crazy stuff, as I'm looking at these things on my different YouTube channel, I get these recommended videos of flat Earth. And I'm like, okay, this is 2015. There are actually people who still believe that. I laughed, didn't look at a video, kept looking at the moon footage, found even more bizarre moon footage that just wasn't making any sense. And these flat Earth videos kept coming up. So I finally watched one and I laughed at how ridiculous this was. In the video, they were debunking it, so it worked out perfectly for me. I could go safely back to my moon videos and not worry about this flat Earth craziness. But it was like, okay, does the moon thing tie into the flat Earth? That didn't get addressed in the video. So I search it that way, flat Earth and the moon. And suddenly there were the questions I had. How does that ring form if the moon's that far away? How does gravity work? And it's like, wow, these questions are similar to mine. So let's look at this. And I watched a couple of videos. They were very well done. They had some craziness in them that I couldn't accept yet, but they definitely had the same questions I had asked my whole life. So let's see what their answers are. And 9 months later, here I am on your show trying to tell people, hey, wake up, the Earth is flat. It took a lot of research, a lot of reading. I didn't just stay with the YouTube videos. I'm well known at my local library. I headed that way, checked out lots of books, looked at lots of old maps, lots of old cosmologies. And turned out for 500 years now, that's pretty much when the ball got set in place with Copernicus. Before that, the Earth was flat, with every culture going back through history. I don't know how much research you guys have done since last we spoke about all this, but I mean, ancient texts, and I'm not talking of, religious texts, I'm just talking about in general history texts from ancient days. It's a general flat Earth cosmology. Now, specific things that have come up with all of this that I've seen for myself, I definitely went and did my own videos. As you guys know, I have a YouTube channel under Flat Earth Head, and the sun and the moon is what got me here. So I started looking at that because I can see that myself. I don't have to rely on somebody else's videos. I don't have to rely on somebody else's research. So I'm out there and I'm doing videos. I'm doing close-ups. I'm doing filtration. I'm seeing that the sun is literally passing through clouds right over the ocean there. And that's, right offshore where I live. And that's just not something that I've ever seen before because I've never looked for that. But I don't know. Like I said, if you've watched the video, you can see the rays go through. You see them get the shadow of the cloud pass on the water underneath. And that's a local light source. That's not 93 million miles away. And in my eyes, I mean, you've seen the video. What do you think about what you're seeing there? Do you think it's a trick of light? Do you think it's refraction? What?
Are we referring to the unedited on Dark Filter 1 video?
Well, that's the original video that I did, right? That's the one that I put out because people kept accusing me of doing CGI animation on the first video I put up that showed. It's the one with the probably little green circles on the screen. It's Flat Earth sun with a surprise guest, I think is what the first one is. And you can
the
see
one
the
with the
sun
inchworm?
on top of the cloud. Looks like a ramp going up to the sun. You see a contrail go across the sky, and there's a little gap that it leaves, and the sun literally passes through it. You see the rays make the shape of the shadow.
So what do you think the inchworm is?
See, now you're cheating. I wasn't going to talk about that.
Well, we've already watched the video, so we already know about all that.
I really don't. As you see, I mean, from my commentary there, it blew me away because I was not out there trying to discover some weird thing in the sky. I just wanted to see what the sun was doing. And on reviewing the video, here goes this weird thing. I just watched a jet fly by, and this definitely doesn't fly by like a jet. I don't know. I really don't. I mean, I've seen all kind of propulsion systems. There's a plasma drive out there that does little bursts behind it. That could be something like that that we don't know about. You know, there's all kind of dark government projects that are technology we don't have access to. Perhaps being that it's offshore, they're doing tests out there over the ocean. I don't know. It could have been something like that. You know, I don't want to start touting the whole UFO thing. It definitely is an unidentified object going across the sun, and it definitely doesn't travel like the jet that passes by minutes before that. I really don't know. I mean, what did it look like to you guys?
Oh, I would say inchworm is a good
Pretty good.
description. Yeah, it's just a weird thing. I don't. It just looked like a weird little thing in the sky that happens sometimes. So
I'm new to all this video processing. I have no clue. I found a program that let me do some close-ups of that video, which is probably the last one on my channel.
yeah, it was
And
something
it,
on your lens.
yeah, up close, it really looks crazy. It just does. It's insane. I don't know. I've never seen anything travel like that. But that kind of, you know,
So, based on what you have learned and you have researched, excuse me, is there anything that would indicate what that could be?
the inchworm.
Correct.
Okay. Well, in my history, I did look at the whole UFO phenomena. I really dug into it deeply, and to the point that in the early, I guess late '90s, I did a local access show with a friend, and we were. That's what we did. We dug into anything unusual. It was called Reality Check, and we did alternative news. We did health. We did unusual phenomena. We did phone interviews with Stanton Friedman. We actually had Lloyd Pye on the show talking about his book, which kind of ties into some of the, I guess, ancient alien gods theories or some of the Zachariah Sitchin type theories that are out there. He was a very interesting guest. Got to know him pretty good on the show. And then I went to another lecture from another speaker, and he was a guest with his latest discovery, which was the Star Child skull. Now, I don't know if you've ever researched that, but he came back to our show, brought it. I actually got to look at it up close, hold it, feel it, compare it to the human skull he brought, and it definitely wasn't normal. Now, it's been,
That's the one from El Paso, Texas.
that's it, exactly.
Okay.
They've done
Crystal skull?
DNA.
Not a crystal skull.
I'm sorry?
That's not a crystal skull.
Oh, no, not the crystal one. No, this is.
Okay. Does it have
Star-
anything to do with the
oh.
crystal skulls?
No, I don't. The little research I did back in the '80s on the crystal skull thing, it looked like some of those had been recently manufactured after the, you know, tests were done, and then some of them looked really ancient. I mean, we use crystals in our technology to store memory and to store information and data, so it's very possible that they could be something along those lines. We don't know. I don't know for sure, but I really don't know enough about the crystal skull thing. I know that the Star Child skull, when they did the DNA test, the mother side came back normal, the fathers came back unknown. They've done other tests since then, and I really kind of haven't kept up with it because as I further studied the UFO phenomena and met, like I said, Lloyd Pye, Whitley Strieber, I got to know him, talked at length, and it just started seeming that kind of like what's happening with the flat earth. There were a lot of gatekeepers who were trying to be, you know, the number one authority on the information and don't listen to anybody else. And it just kind of, it devolved into, you know, name calling and finger pointing and kind of what's going on right now in the flat earth movement. And it just was not genuine anymore. And I could see the research was just all over the place. And what I was uncovering just wasn't holding together. So I kind of backed away from that whole thing. That's why I really didn't want to go into the inchworm UFO, but I did capture it on film. I don't know. The Star Child skull is definitely still an enigma. Nobody's got an answer. And interestingly enough, Lloyd is no longer with us. It really saddened me when I found out he passed not too many months back. So I hope whoever is in possession of it continues to do the work, and maybe they can find out something we don't know about it. I don't have the answers for sure, but just trying to say I've looked at a lot of things, and this flat Earth thing kind of changes a lot of perspective.
Now, what about? Do you think there's any correlation between Daniel Shelton and him starting or restarting the movement in 2013 and Lloyd Pye dying in 2013?
Wow, see, I didn't realize my history, not history, my research as far back as I saw. I think it was, I believe Eric Dubay put a book out in 2014. And that was the earliest that I knew as far as its recent resurgent. I didn't know someone had actually started ringing that bell back in 2013, and I surely didn't realize it was that close to Lloyd's death.
Yeah, Dan Shenton, he started probably about 2009, 2010. He started going out again and trying to, in I guess in his words, again, his words were that he wanted to bring it back to what the original Flat Earth Society was based
Uh,
on the Zataic Society.
yeah, okay. If you don't mind, I'm going to go off on a bit of a tangent.
That's fine. Go ahead.
Okay. In my research, of course, early into this, I came across the Flat Earth Society, the classic, the Flat Earth Society that you've heard about since you were in high school and everybody joked about. Kind of became the reference point for being an imbecile or an ignorant person. You're a flat earther, Flat Earth Society, etc. In my research, I've come to understand that that was actually set up by that a gentleman, and I'm so terrible with names, I could look it up, but he was an extravagant, very flamboyant figure. They did a lot of costuming, almost like the original cosplayers, I guess. And they basically turned it into a circus sideshow. They put forth a lot of crazy ideas, like that we're on this little thin plate that somehow still spins and is always accelerating upward at this exact rate. I believe you guys touched on that a bit on your last show on the flat Earth. It's a constant acceleration that makes gravity happen. And what's the other crazy? Oh, when satellites go across the top of the flat Earth and they get to the side of the plate, they miraculously go through this wormhole to the other side, and that's how stars do it too. And it's just craziness. I mean, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't logically hold together, and that seems to be the point. Somebody wants to do real research. The first thing they see is Flat Earth Society. It's been around. They should know their stuff. They go there and find all these crazy ideas that make no sense.
So,
And even a documentary they put out. I'm sorry. That go ahead.
are you referring to Samuel Rothbottom?
Rock bottom. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
I just want to make
Very
sure we're on the
flamboyant.
same page. That's all.
Yeah, and I know he started a lot of the research, but again, it's kind of that whole disinfo classic technique. There's lots of truth in there, but then they throw in the crazy part to make you just laugh it off and walk away. I mean, have you seen their little documentary they put out? I think in 1990, and in it, it's almost like watching an old SNL skit. There's so much dry humor and straight deadpan face. It's like watching a comedy documentary about the flat Earth, and this is their official presentation to the world, and they're making a joke of it themselves. They use very almost Monty Python type graphic cartoons. They use very silly looking narrator who just it's just a joke, and that's the point. They're trying to keep real research from being done. I figured that out early and left that alone. And again, I do my own research. I don't like to trust other people's findings. I want to see it for myself, so I kind of left that alone. Unfortunately, I came across the International Flat Earth Research Society not long after that, which is currently Eric
Eric
DeBay's
DeBay.
wheelhouse, right? And let's see, went there, and just in 2 pages, it was nothing but name calling, and this one's a chill, and that one's a troll, and this guy's crazy, and that guy. It was like, okay, it's just like high school children. What are we doing? We're trying to find out what's going on in reality. Why? I knew people that I had found in the research, and they seemed honest, and they seemed like they were generally trying to help people out and finding out what's going on. And 10 minutes they were on the site, and they're banned. A lot of my people that I'm friends with on Twitter that we talk about all this flat Earth, the same thing with them. They went on, tried to be, they asked 2, 3 questions, they're banned. It's kind of like it's either Eric's way or the highway. And then as I do the research, I find that he has a lot of anti Semitic, I guess, slant to his work. It just seems like another way to bring people in and show crazy stuff so that they don't do the real research, and it just muddies the water. It makes it, well, you've
Yeah, but
seen his.
then there's the people who say that, oh, well, they're just using him to say that, oh, they're saying nasty things like, oh, the Jews control the conspiracy, just to discredit the flat Earth
That
people
could
who
very
are
well.
actually believe it and actually want to do some earnest research into it. And then there's the other guy with the aliens. And what's your stance?
Which guy? Which guy? I have to know. It's just too funny.
I don't know. I'm not good with names either, but I
Yeah.
know because there's one that uses aliens the way that another one is being used
Yeah.
with the Jews. And then there's
Yeah.
somebody else that has something with a dome, and then that has something to do with something else. But I know that, aliens is what's your stance on aliens?
Well, again, I did the research, and it seemed to be a lot of just too much. There's too many different ideas out there, and
Like
believe
the
me, I
grays
mean,
and the whites and the blues and
secty ones. There's
the
angel looking. I mean,
Orions.
it's yeah, right, right. The what is it? The Ashtar people. Then they had the guy in Switzerland who had the Mayer had the beautiful photographs, and then he had the crazy cosmology that went along with it that he was being given, and all these
But then where
meeting
do
with
the
people.
Aryans fit in?
I'm sorry?
The Aryans, like they mentioned the Aryans as, the Aryan
Like
race, but
the
then
race?
but
Oh,
then there's also the more um, West Indies, West Indian Aryan when they
uh-huh.
speak of their mythology.
That's what I'm
How
saying.
can
It's so
those be the
interesting.
same? But
I'm having a hard time hearing your actual audio, man. I'm sorry. I can
yeah,
hear
I'm
everybody.
sorry, I moved my microphone placement a bit.
That might be what it happened.
Is this a little better?
Um,
How's this?
yeah, man. It's really a hard thing to say without it going off to a little kooky area. I mean, I definitely have seen all the things you're talking about. The what is it? The can't remember the place they're supposed to be from. I guess Orion or something, and they're the ones that are behind it. That might be the alien guys you're talking about. But again, I can't remember his name. I've looked at it, and it just seems like another crazy thing to keep people from doing the true research. Um, I try myself just to keep strictly to what I can see with my eyes, do the experiments myself, see the sun. I'm working on moon videos at this point. The whole who's behind it all thing, I mean,
Yeah, who's behind it
generally
all?
that's kind of where my friends draw the line. It's like, okay, let's say the Earth's flat and it's been hidden from us at least since the 50s when they allegedly launched these rockets and can get up there and see what's going on. So at least since that long, they've had a knowledge of what it really looks like and have kept it from us. So then they go, okay, well, why? Why would they keep it from us? And that's when it kind of goes to all these other crazy people's theories. I kind of go with this whole, you know, I've seen what's going on in the world as far as the governments of our world. And anyone who thinks the government is here to help us is pretty off center. They are there to keep us in line, to keep us all paying the bills, doing the jobs, going to school, keeping society going, building the roads, that kind of thing. But if they had to suddenly turn around and admit that all of this was a lie. All this was at least a misunderstanding until the 50s, and then it became a lie. Then they all are, I mean, they have to be held accountable. NASA has to be held accountable for all the trillions of dollars they've wasted of our money and all these lies they've put forth. The governments have to be held accountable. And then that kind of breaks down their little system of keeping us all doing our jobs, paying our bills, keeping the little machine running. That's what I prefer to look at this as, why they would do this and keep it under wraps. Because if from birth to death you don't even know where you live, they can tell you anything on television,
Oh,
on
they
radio.
do. They do. They
Well,
fucking tell
exactly.
us, pardon my language, but they're telling us stuff all the time. So
That's
where
why
did
CompStat is such a huge scam. I'm sorry.
Exactly. Exactly. The why picture is, that's the hard one to get across, and I think that's where a lot of people's cognitive dissonance kicks in, and kind of really frightens them away from looking any further. I've got two friends who've really gone far with this with me, and they get to a point and they can't go any further. In fact, one is almost like severed our friendship over this, and it's really sad because this is just information. I'm not, it's not. I don't feel it's inherently evil in any way to look at information. And why would you want to hide information from your own self? Why would you deny yourself the opportunity to look at something in a different way? I just don't understand that mindset, because I've always wanted to look a little further. So, burying your head in the sand to not look at a truth, just, I don't get it. I just don't. And that's what they want. They don't want people to look. They don't want them to dig, because then they see all the lies and all the media propaganda, and you know, you see the news, you see what they, every other day there's some crazy thing, and it's just ridiculous at this point.
So in your flat Earth sun travel across sky video,
Yeah.
in that one, that actually brought a question to mind. So, based on your own research, not looking at what anybody else says, so the sky would then be really the sky. It's not just a projection. Then, do I understand that correctly?
Right. I've also looked at those ideas, the whole holographic sky, moon, etc. And in some of the videos, I've seen some pretty interesting things. But then it goes back to that, okay, I'm trusting this person's video. I won't trust NASA's footage, but I'll say that this crazy video is real. I really can't do that either. That's kind of a double standard. It's interesting, the footage, and I've seen some, like, moon going on and off and melting and just crazy stuff. Atmospheric effects, camera problems. Yeah, sure, could be any of that. But like with my video, the sun is closer than anyone has any idea. I've seen it do those clouds. I mean, every day I'm out doing footage. It doesn't always turn out as nice as I want, but binoculars and my footage, the sun is in those clouds. I've seen it go through them. I've seen them go behind it. I've seen them be attracted to the sun in a way that's almost, I mean, the clouds are being blown away from the direction of the sun, but they're trailing like a vapor trail behind them, where they're being attracted back towards the sun. And then that night, there's the huge ring around the moon where the clouds are being repelled away. And as they blow through that ring, they literally dissipate and become part of that ring, which kind of led me to this whole idea of the sun being a positively charged object or phenomenon, and the moon being a negatively charged phenomena. And if you kind of play with that on the flat Earth map and look at the path of the sun, which kind of is traveling on the equator, that's why the equator is the hottest part of the Earth. And as it travels around that path of the equator, it's almost like it's pulling some of the water with it, which I didn't know until recently. Ocean water is extremely magnetic.
Due to the salt
Salt,
content.
Right, I didn't know. I was playing with some neodymium magnets and just messing with something with some water in it, and it kind of moved it. And I'm like, wow, okay. So just playing around and put it on a little piece of styrofoam and float it across. Wow, and then okay, salt water, put a little salt, and boom, it flew across. I'm like, wow. So maybe that's the whole attraction and repulsion, and that causes the tides, perhaps. And then the whole Coriolis effect that people go off on, that's a proof of the globe. Well, that's one of those double standard things. The atmosphere can't release its grip at the north. I mean, at the equator headed north, and then slow down with the spin there because it slows down. But then when it swirls back to the equator, it speeds back up, and so that's the core. You can't have it that way. It can't be that loose at that point, but the gravity holds it in place for the airplane not to have a different speed going east and west. You know, you can't have both effects going on with that whole equator spin thing. So it's either one way or the other. Either the atmosphere is being velcroed to the earth or it's not. It can't be both ways. It can't be a selective gravity force that's got some intelligence that makes it hold you down just enough but lets the plane do its thing, but lets
Why
the
not?
wind do its thing. You know, it's just ludicrous.
So would so when you
Okay.
when you mentioned the when you mentioned that part of it, I know you're by the coastline and you're further south, but would there be an explanation to the Aurora Borealis? How would that fit in, or does that fit in?
It seems to me it is an effect of the magnetism that I'm kind of talking about. It seems to me that's kind of what everything is based on, is an electromagnetic theory. That's kind of where I'm at. The okay. Do you not have you seen the research on this young girl, 16, I think? She's found these plasma tubes that are in our atmosphere.
Did you say plasmatudes?
Plasma tubes, yeah. She's real young and she's blown the science world open with this discovery of plasma tubes, which had been theorized previously. It's kind of like, okay, lightning from on the earth plane, lightning goes usually from the earth to the sky when it happens. It's not really coming from the sky to the earth. That's, if you look at the video slow down, that's usually what happens. And it doesn't just happen in storms. It happens in volcano eruptions. It happens during earthquakes. It has a lot to do with earth-based thing, tectonic plates rubbing together, creating this, and it discharges upward into the atmosphere. Then above the cloud level, they've got high altitude planes up there videoing these things they call sprites, which go above the clouds up, and they're like an electrical phenomena as well. And they really don't understand where they're going. Well, the theory was that there's these plasma tubes, not really visible, but they're always kind of there waiting to be filled with this energy pulse. That's kind of what the track of a lightning bolt is.
Like the square
Well, this young
kilometer
girl has-
array, then.
I'm sorry?
The square kilometer array. If we're talking about this Cleo Lowy from the University
Right.
of Sydney.
That's her.
Okay.
Yes. Again, I'm terrible with names. Right.
No problem.
So in my idea, it's kind of like these electrical charges are always just waiting to be happening. The sun, from my videos and from the viewings I've done with binoculars shaded up and you know, safely, it doesn't seem to be an object. It seems to be an electrical occurrence that's happening above our heads with some type of. Have you guys ever looked into a phenomenon called sonoluminescence? It's where they've taken this little bubble inside of a media, water or atmosphere, and a bubble's created, and then they hit it with vibration. And when they hit it with these frequencies, it lights up just like a star.
Right.
Or the sun.
It's the passage of sound waves.
Cymatics, exactly. Right. And that's kind of what, when I saw that video and that little thing popped into existence out of nothing and it was a star in that little bottle, it was like, wow, that's interesting. And so I went back looking at the sun with that in mind and thinking about, okay, if all of these plasma tubes are there and all this electrical stuff is always waiting to happen between the Earth and the atmosphere, possibly that's where the sun's occurring. It's up there. It's electromagnetic in nature. It's the positive charge. The moon comes behind it. It's the negative charge. Historically, there's ancient beliefs that that's where the whole yin yang symbology comes from, is the path of the sun and the moon over the flat earth, is kind of, that theory, the positivity and the negativity. Our bodies are filled with an magnetic charge. We actually have a torsus field that goes out of our head, around our body, and back up through our feet. And that's what they say is around our earth, the magnetosphere. That can still happen on a flat plane. Also, incidentally, it doesn't just have to be a big ball floating in space for it to have that torsus field around it. Everything seems to be tied in with electromagnetic power, energy, frequency, sound, all of that. I don't have enough information on it myself that I've accumulated. I'm doing the research, I'm making the videos, I'm seeing the effects with the sun pulling the clouds to it and the moon repelling them away from it. Still trying to get that nighttime footage better. It's really horrible right now, but that's where I'm at with this. It's some type of electromagnetic phenomena. It's also a variable height thing. That's a lot of problems people have with the whole flat earth model. Some people have the sun at 4,000 miles away. Some have it at 6,000 miles away. Some have done the math and it was like 50 miles away. I've actually got video that it changes.
Who said that the Earth would
it changes
50
the
miles
size
away from the sun?
I'm sorry?
Who said that the Earth was 50 miles away from the sun?
This was somebody else's math. I've not done that math myself, but they pulled out their protractor and they looked at some crepuscular rays through some clouds, and they did the math, and that's what they came up with. I don't know about that one. That's a little too close for my, what I'm looking at. But I've seen the footage of a friend flying from Alaska. He sent me the footage when he took off in Alaska, heading home, and the sun is right out the window, literally below his wing level, and you can see the hot spot. That sun is shining down onto the clouds below it. And I'm a slight artist, and I know from doing art that a hot spot is caused by a localized light source. It doesn't happen from 93 million miles away. Just like, you're shading a ball or a sphere when you're drawing it and you make a shiny spot to show the roundness of it. Well, that's the hot spot of the light source, and it's usually going to be directed exactly where that light source is. And it is right there above the clouds. There's a big, huge sunspot below it. It's pretty obvious the sun is at least as high as he is that day, or I guess as low as he is that day. I do believe it changes in its heights. I don't know how much that height varies. Like I said, in some of my footage, I can see the difference in height just from the path one day and the path the next day, and the landmarks. So it definitely has variable heights.
Would you then say that, just to clarify, I guess a more of a personal question for myself,
Sure.
Would you then say that the Earth itself goes around the sun, or that the sun goes around the Earth?
No, the sun is definitely above us. We're a flat plane. This is where I'm at.
Okay.
We're on a flat plane. Now, the lengths, breadths, how far it goes, I have no idea. I've never been to those edges. I've never been to the Antarctic walls or whatever they say is there. I can't verify that. I can say that with my personal observations I've gone across the country. I've been on mountaintops. I've been in airplanes. I've seen the lack of curve. I've looked for it. I was disappointed the first time I flew that I couldn't see. All I could justify in my mind was maybe I wasn't high enough to see it. But then you see the fake footage of NASA from the same height, and it's like an orange below us. So, sorry, I got a little off topic there.
No, it's okay.
Definitely the Earth is a flat plane. That is my experience. It is motionless. It doesn't spin. We're not hurtling through an infinite void. We are stationary. And from the star trail footage that I've seen. Granted, other people have done it, but from the actual Polaris point in my sky, I can go out every 25 minutes and see that Orion has done a headstand at one point, and a few hours later, now he's below Polaris, the Orion constellation, and it's completely upside down to where it was a few hours ago. So, in my own experience, I can see that the constellations are revolving around Polaris. Polaris, which incidentally has been the guiding star, the North Star, the guiding point on Earth as far back as recorded history, which isn't possible to me if we're doing 1,000 miles an hour and 60,000 around the sun and almost 250,000 throughout the galaxy. I mean, how would that stay lined up for thousands of years? How would any of the constellations keep their shape that we've got recorded for at least thousands of years if we're flying through all this infinite void and every other star is also doing that same flying through the infinite void away from each other according to the Big Bang Theory? How does any of that stay lined up?
Then the universe is flat as well.
Century to century. I'm sorry?
The universe is flat as well.
Interesting. Okay, that's an interesting theory. I've seen that as well, but it still doesn't explain the lack of parallax. Parallax should be happening when you look up over the years for sure, if not over the nighttime. I mean, think about this. You're in a car. You look out the window of the car. You're doing 55 miles an hour. You look out the window on the ground right next to you at the white line. And all the rocks and grass is all flying by at an incredible rate to your eyes. Across the field, the tree, it's going by, but it's not going by nearly as fast. And way out there, that mountain, it's barely moving. And my goodness, the sun or the moon, it's not moving at all. But right next to you, it's flying by. Well, that's what parallax is. Looking up into an infinite void that everything is doing millions of miles an hour away from each other, you should see some of that movement. Actually, the sky should be a big light show at all times with all the stars cruising around through it. The only way they can justify that it doesn't do that is putting all these stars billions and trillions of miles away out there and making them, work out with their calculations, which have also changed throughout all the centuries to fit their newer models. I mean, at one point, the sun was 3 million miles away, then it was 31 million miles away, and then we finally got to this current 93 million miles away because it finally made everything fit. Like I said, parallax. I'm sorry, go ahead.
So just going back to the sun for a second, since that came back up, do you have any research, or have you done any research, or do you have any reason to not believe that it's mostly made up of hydrogen?
I've seen some research done. My goodness, David. I have a big folder of junk. It would take me 5 minutes to dig through it.
That's fine.
But he's a physicist. It's a video clip. I could send it to you guys. It's great.
Please.
He's talking about the sun. He's talking about the sun and the fact that, we don't have a clue. The sun, from what he's determined, it could be a hollow thing. It doesn't seem to be producing all these reactions that people, he's completely going against everything that standard science says the sun is doing. Yes, I've seen the footage from the Soho and the Sechi and all those satellites that are constantly showing us sun footage. I've watched those for some number of hours.
Because the reason that I ask is I'm not sure if you're familiar of a physicist named Peter Zeeman.
No.
Okay, he was a Dutch physicist. He won a Nobel Prize in 1900 or 1902, something like that. So there's this in the engineering field, there's this thing called the Zeeman effect of hydrogen. And what it says is that when an external magnetic field is applied, then the transition of hydrogen is split into closely spaced lines. And the reason why I bring that up is because of what you had stated earlier with the sun traveling along the equator, and it looks as if the waves are getting pulled towards it. So hydrogen can be magnetic.
Wow, that's interesting. Now you got me. I'm going straight after this to go look this guy up. That's great. That definitely could play into this. And I mean, the magnetic model I'm trying to come up with, that definitely would fit into it. Have you ever seen? There's a site. It's called I think it's null.earthschool.org perhaps, and it's a model of the Earth, and you can play with like wind currents, ocean currents. Particulates through the atmosphere. You can actually watch the BP Gulf spill happen in real time on this thing if you go back and look at that. I mean, it's pretty crazy what they have with all the buoys and all the, different measuring devices out there. But if you go to this site and you look at the globe and you put all the animations on it with the wind currents and everything and the temperatures, and it looks interesting. And then you put it on the azimuthal equidistant map, which is what we consider the flat Earth map.
Okay.
It works. It looks, the red ring of the temperature goes right along the path of the sun, which also changes from the Tropic of Capricorn down to the Tropic of Cancer, which is what creates seasons, not some crazy 23-degree tilt that wouldn't work mathematically. Anyway, sorry, get off on that.
So no. Actually, wait a minute. Go back to that. So then,
Yeah.
the seasons and the day-night science,
Yeah.
that we were taught,
Right.
would those then stay the same?
No, think about this. In 6 months, if their model works, in 6 months, we should be completely on the other side of our orbit, right? It's a 12-month cycle of the year. So 6 months, we should be on the other side of our cycle around the sun, which means at that point, our daytime and nighttime reference should be completely different. We should see a completely different set of stars at night than we do it in the daytime. And I know it's hard to say this and make it work in your head. You really need to see the model I'm talking about. But again, I'll send you the little model of what this is from, NASA and science and their little model of how this works. But if you actually look, it's pointing that these would actually be a whole different set of constellations we would be seeing at night. We would be completely the opposite direction every 6 months. And that's not what we see. We see the same stars surrounding Polaris every night of the year. As far as, I believe, Bolivia, somewhere below the equator for sure. And you shouldn't even be able to see Polaris past the equator if the ball is what they say it is.
So what if it is what your research suggests that we are flat? What would be? Is there anything below us?
The Earth that we've explored is at least 8 miles, and at last point, I think with some of the sonographic technology, they can see that there's another 10 miles beneath that. And that's it. That's as far as we've dug or sound waved or sonogrammed or whatever. 10 miles. That's our knowledge of how deep this thing goes. And that's really all I can tell you for sure. I've never had the ability to go out there in what they call space to look back on it. I can't say if it's a plate. I can't say if it's an infinite field. And as far as the whole dome idea, I have some problems with that as well. If I had the answers, man, I would love to give them to you. That's what we're all looking for. And that's why I hate to see, people get dissuaded from this research by some of the crazy things that are going on in the field right now. And I'm glad you guys are willing to, look at some of the good evidence and some of the good research and kind of do away with some of the crazy stuff like the flying up at a constant rate constantly.
We appreciate you coming on the show. So I want to thank you for that. Is there any parting words or statements or anything that you would like to add?
Surely. Generally, and this is for everybody who's listening, you don't have to believe everything that you see on your television, certainly. In fact, I would say turn that off and think for yourself. You don't have to believe everything you read in a textbook or that you learned in college. You have a brain. Use it yourself. Go out and do your own experiments. Go out and do your own research. Read. Stay away from the YouTube videos. Do your own reading. Now, you can go watch my YouTube videos. No, I'm just kidding.
And
but
ours.
Do your own research. And y'all,
and
yeah,
ours,
you guys, of course. Check out these guys. definitely do your own research. Don't even believe what I'm telling you tonight, but I hope it sparked enough questions in somebody out there that they will go out and do their own research. I mean, that's what happened to me. I started this whole thing trying to prove that this was crazy. There's no way the earth is flat. We're on a ball. I know this. And it took me 2 months before I would even bring this up to my fiance, the person I trust my life with. And I wouldn't even talk to my own soulmate about this for 2 months because I felt like a lunatic. And that's kind of the setup, and that's where they have everybody's mind trapped, is if you look at this seriously, you're considered a nut job and ignorant and uninformed and ridiculed. And so nobody that is trying to keep their, social status at a certain level, or their job safe, or their, just their sanity not being questioned, isn't going to talk about this for sure, and they're certainly not going to look at it with any seriousness. So yeah, it's crazy. I thought it was crazy. But go do the research. Go do your own videos. Look at the sun. Look at the moon. Look at the stars. The sky will show you a lot. Look when you're in the plane for that curve. When you're on the mountains, wherever you are, you can do your own visual research. You don't have to rely on somebody else's word, somebody else's knowledge. You just do your own. And then when you do your own research, post that footage. Show everybody else what you're seeing, man. Don't be scared to talk about it, because it definitely is something that people will look at you kind of askance.